the Food Policy Council and PASA Sustainable Agriculture, as well as Grow Pittsburgh, have collaborated to bring together this series of virtual urban farm tours in order to commemorate Urban Ag Week in Pennsylvania. Each webinar will highlight a partner organization, or two in the case tonight, and urban farming resources, take us on a 25-minute pre-recorded urban farm tour, and conclude with an interactive Q&A. We are using the chat box feature to accept questions this evening. You can type a question into the chat box at any time for our moderator to ask during the Q&A session. Please, when you send a question in the little drop-down box, please select all panelists to send your question to. If you have been on this tour before in previous years, you know that under normal circumstances, we organize a day of self-guided farm tours. In years past, we sold tickets to the tour, and the revenue supported the Pittsburgh Urban Growers Scholarship Fund, which provides professional development opportunities to growers in Allegheny County. Because our format this year is virtual and free of charge, it costs significantly less to organize and promote. And a benefit of that is that now the $1,200 from the co-op's event and promotions budget will be donated to the scholarship fund, and the remainder of the budget will provide a $200 honorarium to each participating farm. The East End Food Co-op is also taking donations all month long through their Register Roundup program. If you're local to Pittsburgh and you shop at the co-op during the month of July, you can round up your total to the nearest dollar at checkout, and your spare change will be donated to the Urban Growers Scholarship Fund. And finally, the co-op is also raising money through a seed sale this year. For every packet of seeds sold at the co-op all year long, 25 cents will be donated to the scholarship fund. And apparently they just received a shipment of seeds for summer and fall, and as well as seeds for the 2021 growing season. Whatever your reason for joining us tonight, whether you simply want to see a beautiful urban farm from the safety and comfort of home, if you're a grower looking to learn from other growers, or are interested in learning about resources available to help you with a site of your own, our hope is that you will find these webinars to be very valuable. We know that we all know that urban farms and gardens are critical to community connection and revitalization, providing fresh food access, improving the environment, and as an outlet for youth training and development. We are so grateful for all of the urban farms and farmers in our region, and there are many. This evening, we will have a chance to learn about Grow Pittsburgh's Master Composter program and their Garden Sustainability Fund, and we'll take a virtual tour of the Duquesne Victory Community Garden. This garden in Duquesne was established in 2018 with the help of a few local gardening advocates and Grow Pittsburgh. The Duquesne Garden offers garden plots for rent for personal use, while also offering plots that are maintained by volunteers that help feed the community. And we'll learn a lot more about that this evening. Our Q&A moderator this evening is John Burgess from the Allegheny County Conservation District. John is also one of the co-chairs of the Urban Ag Working Group convened by the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council. Please remember that you may submit your questions to all panelists in the chat box at any time during the webinar. They will be addressed in the Q&A session later on. We have Russ Thorson here with us this evening to tell us about the Master Composter program, and Alyssa Kale will share information about the Community Garden Sustainability Fund. Both of these are Grow Pittsburgh programs, and both Russ and Alyssa are Grow Pittsburgh employees. Thank you both for joining us tonight. And Russ, would you like to go ahead and start by telling us more about the Master Composting program?
Sure. Yeah, that was a great introduction. Thanks. Yeah, just take a second as the screen sharing kicks in. But yeah, I can give a little background. Yeah, so the Master Composter program started in. Okay, hold on. Let's go first. Wait for a second here.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure why sustainability is up, but Alyssa, if you're seeing that, if you want to go.
Sure, yeah. Let's do the switch.
I just had to unmute. And Dan, can you minimize your images of us on your screen? Maybe it's frozen. But the Community Garden Sustainability Fund is, it's a small grant program for existing community gardens, which I'll explain a little bit in a minute, within Allegheny County. It's a collaboration between Grow Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania Conservancy. It's funded in part by Allegheny County Economic Development. And since 2013, so from 2013 to 2019, we've supported over 100 unique gardens with over $107,000 of materials and other types of support from this fund. So that doesn't include what we've already spent this year in round one. So who is eligible? Existing gardens. So that means you're already, you've got food plants in the ground, you're already growing, it's an established site. And then secondly, you have to have some sort of community component. So it has a community focus, whether it's a school, a church, a food bank, or just for your neighborhood community. It has to be accessible to a certain select group of people. Next slide. It appears that maybe Dan's screen is frozen.
Yes, it appears
Yes.
that it is. I apologize.
Okay.
Apologies. Just hold for 1 second, okay?
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just me. So the reason that we call the Community Garden Sustainability Fund as such is because we want to see community gardens be sustainable. We want to invest in both their environmental sustainability and also their longevity as growing spaces for their communities.
Alyssa, in case we aren't able to figure this out, I think Dan is having some trouble. Would you mind just reading off of your slides to us, but we might not be able to have them up on the screen there.
Sure, yeah, let me just pull those up.
Yeah, take your time.
All right. And so the next slide had some images, but they're really not necessary. I wanted to talk a little bit about what types of things you can apply for. So through this grant, it's unlike other grants where we just cut you a check and set you free to spend how you please. With this grant, we typically are purchasing the materials requested and delivering those to the garden. So so we ask that you be really specific in the types of things that you're looking for so that we can just go ahead and purchase those and get those to your garden as quickly as possible. So the types of things that you can apply for are like rain barrels and other sorts of rain catchment systems or irrigation systems. So drip hoses, that type of thing. People often ask for raised beds, so either repairing or replacing their existing raised beds or expanding and adding new raised beds. So we can provide really nice, durable raised beds made from locally sourced wood and soil and compost to fill those. Folks also often ask for soil and compost to top off their beds after you know, sometimes there's compaction that happens over the years and you need to add a little bit more material. Tools are a regular request. Seeds, seedlings, and perennials are often a springtime request. Season extension materials, trellising, fencing, signage. And then we also offer technical assistance and consultation. So that would be like, you know, if you're seeking a tree to be cut down or pruned that's beyond our skill set and expertise, we would likely contract with a local organization or tree cutting business to get those folks out, and we would pay the invoice. And then lastly, I just want to mention the timeline. So right now we're in round 2 for 2020. And so this is our fall round. Applications are open now, but they're not due until September 1st. So there's plenty of time to complete those. We are hosting an info session online. It was going to be in person, but we all know what's going on. So it'll be on August 8th at 10 a.m. There's more information on our website about how to register for that, but that's a good time to kind of come and learn more about the application process. The more specific your application can be, the better, and so we can kind of walk you through that, and there'll be tons of time for question and answer. So applications close September 1st. Our decisions, we get together in committee sometime in September. Decisions are normally sent out in early October. And so we strive to fulfill all of the approved applications between early October and December 15th. So that's just something to consider when you're thinking about what you might apply for. So more information can be found on our website. And that's at Grow Pittsburgh, and then there's a couple of tabs to click through that you can see there. But ultimately, you'll come to the Community Garden Sustainability Fund page. So I'll take questions in the Q&A period if you have anything specific to this program. And I just want to mention that the reason why I'm chatting tonight in collaboration with Duquesne Community Victory Garden is because they, in the springtime, received we were able to approve their application, and they received some trellising materials and some other types of materials to help them improve their productivity this season. And I was even able to do a socially distant but in-person skill share with them to show them how to prune tomatoes and trellis them, which was really, really great. And it's a really fun group, and I'm excited to see their video. So thank you. I'll pass it off to Russ now.
Cool. Thanks, Alyssa. I think it's gonna work here. Feeling good.
Just 1 minute here, which oh boy. Russ, if you want to go ahead, I'll pull it up.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Oh, there we go. So yeah, I'm Russ Thorson. I'm a community garden coordinator with Grow Pittsburgh, and I run and teach the Master Composter program. If you want to go to the next one. So yeah, the Master Composter program kind of came from two different questions, and they kind of converged really nicely together. So the first one was the Three Rivers Urban Soil Symposium. So I helped organize that the past 2 years, and it worked out really well because we were kind of coming to these questions kind of at the end of each presentation, figuring out, there's a lot of physical contamination, a lot of compaction and heavy rubble and concrete in soils, as well as heavy metals that are in general just polluting the soils. And so it'd be really nice to have more compost, right? So that's kind of the conclusions we were coming up with at Trust. And then independently, at the community gardens across the county, we were finding that compost systems tend to be something that gets kind of tucked away into the corner, and something that isn't really the main focus of the garden, which makes total sense, right? There's people working on all the community interactions they have to do. They're keeping up with harvests. They're dealing with pests and disease. So in general, compost is something that kind of falls to the wayside. And what we were finding is that compost systems would get kind of overloaded with clearing everything out of the garden at the end of the year. And that just kind of makes for a very, very slow compost recipe. So in general, people weren't making that kind of consistent, healthy, good product of compost. So we thought, well, if we can build a master composter program, we can kind of address those two things at once. So the master composter program is very much a train the trainer thing. So the idea is if we can train people working already in existing community gardens or community growing spaces so that we don't have to recreate the wheel. We don't have to create a new meeting space. We can just train people who are already connected to growers and help them teach their neighbors and community members. So we got a grant from Patagonia, and then what really helped us out is the New York City Composting Project was able to give us their manuals they use in their program. So we were able to print that out, give people kind of like a textbook, and was really helpful just kind of developing lesson plans around there. And then also just really helpful was Dan Dalton over at PASA. Helped organize this event tonight, and in general was really instrumental to the whole program. So big thanks to Dan. But yeah, this is our pilot year. We were originally hoping to do 5 master composters this year, 10 the next year, and then 15 the year after that, so that within 3 years in 2022 we would have 30 master composters trained. But we pivoted really well this year, I think, where we decided to do five project sites instead of individuals, so that it could be numerous people from each project working on there. So we were able to train a lot more people that way, and establish those sites a little bit better. So the 5 gardens we're working with this year is the African Healing Garden, the Bugs Garden, Duquesne Community Victory Garden, the Etna Community Garden, and the Environmental Charter School. And I'm so happy with the mix of this. So we've got gardens in the county as well as the city, on 2 different rivers, and then also a middle school. So we're just kind of real broad range of stuff this year. So I'm just really excited for that. Dan, can you go to the next slide? So the requirements for the course, so we taught 6 classes, May into June. And then we're waiting on the field trips, and then we'll folks have the whole calendar year to work on the 40 hours of volunteer work and the completion of an independent project. So that's kind of the requirement. It's kind of hefty, but it's really exciting because I've for the first time found a bunch of other dirt nerds that are excited to get into the nitty-gritty of worms and bacteria and make their communities a better place with it. So this is a picture from our compost sifter build that we had a couple of weeks ago. You can see Alyssa in there. We staged the sifters in sets so that hopefully we can kind of give ourselves a lot of space when we're building it. But then this is a picture of we have an artist in resident at Grow Pittsburgh, so Mary Tremont through the Office of Public Art. She created this really awesome, it's called the Soil Health Education Cart. So you can bring it to events and teach people about soil. You can do screen printing with dirt, all sorts of stuff. So this is a really cool item. It's going to be available at the Garden Resource Center, our tool library. And just excited because we got some master composters that are excited to be checking it out and using it and incorporating it into the programming that they develop. So it's really coming together really well, and it's been a really exciting process. Yeah, I guess we can shoot it back to Carlin. Oh yeah, I thought I was doing questions now, but that's later. This is when we were standing them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Dan is going to go ahead and start the video of the garden right now, so I'm going to hush.
Hello and welcome to the Duquesne Community Victory Garden. We are located in the yard of the First Presbyterian Church of Duquesne, Pennsylvania. 3 years ago, the land that the garden sits on was just a yard, and it's about 1/4 of an acre, and it's pretty flat, but we weren't using it really for anything. And one of our leaders had a vision, however, for this land.
Hi, my name is Denise. Looking at the space that we had available every Sunday and just kind of thinking that could be such a beautiful garden one day. That's kind of where the impetus for this started with me. And I said, Judy, do you think if I found the people to put this together, would you be willing to let us put a garden out here? And as Judy is so I have to do most of the time. She said yes. So what I thought was going to be a small garden, I got involved with a young lady by the name of Heather Anderson, who was a really big catalyst of helping us to put this together. She connected us with Grow Pittsburgh. They came in, they saw that we had a vision and a plan, and the community got involved in a major way. I think even beyond any of my expectations, when we had our first community meeting, and the numbers of people who showed up and said, yes, we want a garden, and yes, we're willing to help, was just amazing. It definitely turned from any plan or thought that I had into God's plan, and it has extended way beyond any dream that I had. We give food away on a regular basis to people who are in need. We do it, previously before COVID, we were able to have a free farm stand, which meant that from our farming area, anyone could come up and get free vegetables, whatever was available for the day, and take it home and prepare it for their families. We were able to offer plots at a very, very reasonable rate for local gardeners so that they too could come and garden. I think the other thing that grew out of this that was amazing is the sense of community. When you say community garden, that's exactly what this is. The friendships that have formed here, the bonds that have been made here are just beyond belief. People are committed to the garden, and that's what makes it grow.
Hi, I'm Bernie. I'm just one of the garden volunteers here. And this year I volunteered to kind of man our tomato row. This is the farm portion of the garden where all of this food is grown to give away to the community. So this year we decided to start trellising our tomatoes. Helps a lot with the yield, helps a lot with keeping disease down. And like last year, we had bamboo that we tried to, tie up. Some tomato cages, you guys are probably all familiar with. And as with a lot of tomatoes, it can get to be a nuisance. Lots of falling over when we had a huge storm like we did last night, actually. I think some of the tomatoes that I didn't get to quite yet were toppled over. So this trellising technique, we actually got some material from the Grow Pittsburgh Sustainability Fund this year, which is a great resource for us. So it's been super helpful. And this technique we used, they actually came out and did a little presentation, which is very nice. It's a basket weave type of, you want to do it maybe every 4 feet, something like this. And basically all it is you weave in and out of the tomatoes. And it seems like a very simple technique, but it's very effective, and it really works to just keep them kind of straight and sturdy and growing up instead of out. And that helps with disease, getting them up off the ground. A lot of the disease comes from, even watering your rain, splashing in that dirt. Getting those splashes up, any kind of things that are going to affect the tomatoes, it's onto the leaves and it affects the whole plant. So it's been very helpful this year. We're grateful for the Sustainability Fund. The other thing we're doing is pruning. Heavy pruning for our tomatoes is also very important to limit disease. And as you prune, you may think you get less of a yield, but if your tomatoes are all over the place and you're losing some to rot or disease anyway, I think our yield might be better this year, actually. We'll see. We got a lot of tomatoes. None have ripened quite yet, but that's the goal. So we'll see what happens. So one other thing we got from the Sustainability Fund is this ground cover. And I'm a huge fan, particularly with tomatoes, to also help with what I was saying, that disease prevention, and also keeps weeds down. Not many people like weeding. I've heard some people do, but I'd rather not if I don't have to. So this has been a huge help. I highly recommend it. We like it's kind of companion planting, but also just kind of what tastes good together. You plant next to each other. So basil and tomatoes is a typical combination. So we have interplanted with a lot of basil. I think towards the end we might have some parsley or something, but we attempted marigolds and seeds this year. They didn't quite work out. We've actually had a pretty dry summer so far, which has, been a little bit unusual. But one other thing is you can see these clay pots in here interplanted. They're called boyas, and one of our other gardeners, Sabrina, will be speaking about this. But they've been a huge help this year, especially with the lack of rain. I'll let her get into the details of how they work and all that, but that's another component of our tomato bed, our tomato row.
Okay, so for how I've been taking care of the zucchinis, for me, what I've been doing is I started last year. Instead of letting it grow full, since it actually, the zucchini is a vining plant, I've just been trying to tame it as it goes and kind of keep everything kind of clean. So like as my zucchinis grow and get larger and like the natural state of plants, they just either turn yellow or they kind of get sick eventually, like with powdery mildew and just yellow. And I just prune at the base of them. And when you do that, like you kind of have like a clean vine as like the season grows. So like at the end of the season, this plant may seem kind of bushy right now, but at the end of the season, the vine might be this long, and at the end, it would still be kind of fresh how it looked earlier in the season. And with that, it also helps with the production of more plant. You get a higher yield, which is pretty nice considering. Once you get to the end of the season, you either A, don't want any more zucchini, or B, you're just kind of sick of having like a super bushy plant that's kind of dead at the end with powdery. You kind of end up getting a plant that either starts to die or gets powdery mildew. And what really helps with this technique is you can, once it gets super long, you kind of yield it into like a direction. So it also really helps not take as much space in your bed, especially if you have like a smaller bed and you accidentally planted 4 zucchini plants in your bed, which happens.
Hello, I'm Kathy, and we are in the herb garden. Most of the herbs that are here were started by plant. The only herb that we started with the seeds were the spicy savor basil, and they've worked out real well. We started those in the greenhouse back in February. We have a lot of different types of basil, Thai basil. We have a lemon basil, cinnamon basil, the spicy savor, and the glow basil. We also have a lot of lavender, thyme, rosemary, a lot of coriander. We are leaving the coriander more or less grow wild, so the seeds will spread and we'll have fresh coriander in the spring. We did buy a lemon grass plant, which is doing very well. We have a few different types of oreganos and chives, a lot of chives which came up in the spring. But all of the plants will be coming back next year. We don't have to replant anything. And the herb garden being out in front, we have people could come by, pick the herbs anytime that they want. And it's more or less an inviting intro area to our garden. And we're proud of our garden. And I will say, the herb garden is not a lot of work. That's the best part.
Hello, my name is Cheryl, and we are the latest addition to our garden, which is our cutting flower garden. And we started this garden, I would think it was probably the end of February, beginning of March. And we started with seeds that had been donated, and we planted and started them in our greenhouse. And this was really kind of an experimental project because the seeds that we were using were, a lot of them were expired, but since they were given to us, we couldn't resist planting them. And of course we didn't have to pay for them. So we came to the greenhouse every day to check on them. And it really took a while for them to get started, and we were really getting worried. But before you knew it, they took off, and we planted right after Mother's Day. So most of the flowers were probably only about 3 inches tall when we planted. And I mean, I'm just really, really proud of how our garden turned out. And one of the reasons we planted also was because there is a senior citizen facility, next door, and we thought it would be nice just to cut flowers, take them to the senior citizens, and so we've done that, and we have a. Oh, thank you very much. Maybe we can take these to the senior citizens next door. You think that would be a nice thing to do? Yeah, I do too. You want to say hi? Okay, thank you. Do you want to hold these for me until I'm done? Or do you want me to? Okay, I'll hold them. Thank you. So anyway, too, the senior citizens, a lot of them come out in the morning and they stroll along here and just like really compliment us and thank us for doing this. And they really appreciate it. And, you know, they'll tell us, oh, I remember when you were out here digging, you know, in the cool weather and there was nothing here. And now look how beautiful it is. Yeah, our biggest challenge, of course, this year has been watering because of the hot weather. So that we do come every day. And sometimes like later in the day too. I live very close by. So sometimes in the day I'll just say, oh, I have to like run down to the garden and like check out the flowers and see how they're doing. So sometimes I'm here twice a day. And yeah, as I said, you know, we're really happy with Composter. We're really, you know, proud of it. And I mean, it was just, I mean, we spent no money on this, which is the beauty of it.
Hi, I'm Riley, and these are the blackberries. They're really fun to watch grow, and they're really good to eat after.
This plant is called poke salad, and poke salad has been around, I think, forever. And as a kid, and I'm going on 77 now, as a kid, somewhere around 10 to 12, I grew up over in North DeSales, right over there, and we used to go out, get a brown paper bag, that's what all groceries came in. And I would go out and fill up that brown paper bag and sell it to the neighbors for $1. And on a good day, I'd make $3. $3. It took me all day to do it, but I'd make $3 picking poke salad. And poke salad, like I said, is a green that grows pretty much wild. But we grew some here. I think we're the only, I know we're the only ones that grew it in the garden. We have a friend who loves it, and she mixes it with spinach, and when you boil it and then season it and boil it again, it turns out just like spinach. Very healthy, very healthy, and amazing. 60 years later, I'm still picking poke salad. I'm making as much money though. Took me all day to make $3.
Hi, I'm Tom from the garden. I've been with the garden for 2 years now. When the garden first started out, they didn't have no water system other than the tank behind me. You can see it's a 1,000-gallon tank. What they would do is haul it over to the garden, 5-gallon buckets, and it would erode the soil whenever they're dumping the water. It's just too hard dumping So with a grant, we were able to buy a solar system. And if you look behind, we collect all the water off the downspouts off the church itself. They feed the 1,000-gallon tank, and then there's a tank behind our pumping shed too. Now what we do is we build a manifold of hoses out throughout the garden, and instead of having to carry over here, we got a solar system with a 5.5 gallon per minute pump, and the solar power supplies all the power. Got two 12-volt batteries on it, and they recharge the batteries with the solar power. It's a 115-watt solar panel, 12 volts, and it's more than capable of pumping the water out there. The hose system that we got for it, the pump will shut down if it gets any back pressure if it's not being used, so it's got a safety built into it. And once they start lowering the pressure, it'll start pumping. It turns on and off by itself, and it takes care of the charging system by itself. If we can't use that and the pump's not working for any reason, what we could do is we could fill the cans right from the bottom of the tank itself, and they'll take the water cans over in that cart or hand carry to their own private gardens, and plus the community part of the garden itself too. Inside the shed, the shed was contributed from Grow Pittsburgh, but the pumping system itself and the solar panels was a grant that we put into it. So cost-wise, it was no cost to us as far as getting it started, but it sure helps the people in the garden, because most of the people in the garden, working in the garden, are about my age, and to carry this water around by hand gets kind of monotonous. And plus, when you see with the droughts that we've had around here, it ended up helping us a lot.
Hi everybody, my name's Scott, and I'm here to tell you about our compost system here at the garden. I'm actually filling in for a gardener who couldn't be here today, unfortunately, but she just finished the Master Compost program at Grow Pittsburgh, so she should be here explaining this, but I'll try to fill in the best I can. Right now we have these Pallet compost tanks behind us, and they're basically been used as a holding of material. We've been collecting, each fall we collect leaves from around the perimeter or the property, but also leaves from neighbors. They bring their leaves down instead of putting them in the landfill. We chop them up and we make compost out of them. Right now what we've been doing is, because we've kind of overfilled these a bit and we're taking a break till Alicia finished her compost program, and now that she's a master, we'll change this. But what we've been doing is those bins in the back, we've been starting compost, taking the unfinished compost, it's just not quite ready to be compost, and we're using it as bedding for vermiculture. And it's been really, really great. I love the product that it's become, and I love that we're not having to purchase e-moss or anything like that. It's all coming from right here. So then we make it, and we end up with this really nice worm castings. I don't know if you can see it, but it's been really great. We've produced over the winter, collecting our neighbors and gardeners bring down their kitchen scraps, and we've been putting it in, feeding the worms all winter, and we've produced probably, I want to say 20 to 25 5-gallon buckets, maybe more. I don't want to say how many bins we have downstairs, but so it's been really great, and that's what we do.
Good morning. This is Janet at Garden. We have 31 raised beds. Now, a raised bed is up off of the ground, but you can still have to bend over and to work. We have 4 more higher beds. They're called raised beds also, but they also have these trusty little sides on them that you can just sit and do whatever you want to do in your plot. We have 4 of them, this one, that one, that one, and that one. As you can see, they're all doing very well. Back here behind me, I only have tomato plants in here, and there are 3 tomato plants. And as you can see, they are growing well, and there are tomatoes on them. It's been a pleasure to be able to work in this garden. It's It's just something the neighborhood needed. And even if all the people in the neighborhood don't know it's here, they should. And if we get enough of produce and begin to give it away, why that will be another good thing to do. So it's a good thing to bring people together.
Hi, my name is Barb Mima. I've been part of this community garden for 2.5, close to 3 years. And one of the unique things about community gardening is that, of course, it involves the community. Now, I know that sounds a little silly, but when you live in an urban area that has been fractured for a long time, or there's a lot of hurt and things like that happening when like jobs go away, or those type of things, a community garden just breathes life into a community, and that's what this does. We have good leadership, we have good gardeners. Our gardeners, here's the nice thing, gardening brings all of us together, no matter who we are. We have this common goal to want to watch life in a garden and not death. And so even as we promote it, we go out to promote the garden, we invite the community, whoever they are, to please come. We have little events sometimes to help raise money for it, so people could come and see it. What happens is people come, they sit here, and the peace that transcends us is just amazing, because we're kind of hardwired. It de-stresses us, and it engages us. And so we come here and we can watch something come to life, visually, emotionally, and mentally. And it just does something to us. We become great friends here. I've talked to people here that I may have never had an opportunity to talk to any other way. Like I'm probably not going to chit chat with them in a grocery store. But here, we help each other, we can watch things grow. And so the best part is that we see things come to life and not death. And so that's exciting for me, how it engages our community. Plus, we always have a crop like you see here. And this is early crop we have now. And it's from the community garden, the community part. We have a community part, of course, you will probably already know, and then a private part. But anybody can have this. This is how I found out about the garden. I saw a sign that said free food. I thought, what? So I come up and I saw a garden. I saw people that were relaxed and happy in a sense, and I just couldn't help but become involved. So if this food does not go from people who just come and take it, then we deliver it to other places in a community who we know could probably use it. And that's been a very satisfactory, it's very satisfactory, I should say. It's a good thing to do, and it brings us together. So life, it's about life, and that's what we see here, mentally, physically, emotionally, life. Thank you.
That was really wonderful. Thank you, everyone that was in that video. That was, yeah, Monday night's video was great to watch too, but that was very uplifting. Not only is the garden great, but there's a lot of wisdom there. So I think it's time for John to take over with moderating our Q&A session. So I will mute myself again. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat box and send them to all panelists. John, take it away.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for the video. That was really great to watch, and it was nice to hear from so many different speakers in the garden. Yeah, while we're waiting for some questions to come in, I guess I'll kick things off with a question to you, Scott. You have a lot of cool features, and the garden's really grown over the last few years since you first put it in. And I'm just wondering, with so much participation and so much passion, kind of how you as a group decide to add new things or to create new areas and sort of fill your space?
That's a good question. We have a garden board that we get together. It's been a little different with COVID, but we get together once a month, especially during the growing season. And so that's kind of like the final decider on what gets done. Yeah. Sometimes it's just conversation. Basically, because we're on the church property, we're always mindful of, trying not to make it look too agricultural. So I'll always run by anything that's like a major aesthetic thing by Pastor Judy. Sometimes it's an idea and we just say, let's go for it. If it's not too, if it's not going to be an eyesore.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a follow-up on your agriculture part. Some of your beds or some of your growing is in ground. And, one of the things that a lot of spaces have are soil issues, or at least a process of discovery to see what their soil is like and what they need to do to it. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your soil at the garden site and what you all have done to it to make it productive.
Yeah, so we have, the core is kind of the 6 rows of the community farm area. And then of course the rest is the raised beds. And the 6 rows it was lawn, it was a big grassy knoll. And what had been done before that is, as I understand it, there were houses there. And the houses were torn down and basically buried. And so the part where the rows is, the reason the rows are there is because the soil tested clean enough to grow with lead and arsenic, but they are a struggle right now. And in fact, I think I learned something last night Monday night when they mentioned the bricks leaching calcium, which I didn't realize that. So that was really cool to learn, which might be why the tomatoes are doing well where they are. I don't know, because there's a lot of brick under there. So there's just kind of like a lot of rubble. I mean, it's a common thing. I think it's a Pittsburgh lifestyle. And then this year I take that back. Last year we lost a row of collard greens. And I've never lost collard greens before. So that was a thing. And then there seems to be a problem again. And there was some trouble with the garlic as well. And so what I'm kind of leaning toward in my thinking in a brief conversation with Dan Dalton is that there might be some nematode issues. So we'll probably have to, there's kind of a decision like right now where the garlic came up, we have a row that we can either do a crop now but we're definitely considering cover cropping it and resting it a bit and trying to build the soil with the richest cover crop we can get our hands on. And we tested it when we started, which was 3 years ago, and I'm afraid to say this in front of everybody, but we haven't tested since. So we will definitely be testing before we plant next year to see what's going on in terms of nutrients and stuff. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, all the lime, calcium in concrete is always a big deal. We find lots of magnesium and calcium in soils that can be restrictive. There's sort of a switch-up question now. You have a lot of different people working in your garden, and one of the questions is asking kind of how do you track volunteers or work that occurs in the garden? How do you keep track of all these people doing all these different tasks?
Very organically. We have a work day Wednesday night. So the disclaimer is, of course, COVID came to town and things aren't the same. And that's been really hard for me. I think it's been hard for everybody. if you noticed in the video, people come together in the background and they just get together and they're like really enjoy each other's company and have a lot of fun. And I couldn't get them to be quiet during the filming of that video, which I think is something I think to actually be proud of. And it's funny, but people get together, and so those work days bring people out. And there's people that are involved in the garden, but they fizzled off a little bit because they really, turns out they really miss the camaraderie. And so coming out alone. So what's happened is like a major shrinkage of the people that are really active with the farm part. We still have a lot of activity with the individual, but the people that the people that are working the farm are there. You saw in the video, most of the people in the video just happen to be the people who are there every day. And so it's been neat for me this year because to see people really just, I mean, there's like real ownership. By next year, they won't need me. And Tom comes and waters every day. Cheryl and Kathy are there every day. And so it's a smaller group, and we're starting to have very small work days again on Wednesday. And it's pretty organic. It's conversation, email. Sorry, that was a long answer for that.
That actually ties in really well with one of the other questions. You know, obviously you talked about this sort of extended COVID pause in you know, high density, you know, community events, but can you talk about like how the garden has been a space like beyond, like how you've used it maybe for other types of events or brought people together, you know, in ways that aren't explicitly about maintaining the vegetable beds?
Well, we haven't really had events, and it's partially a board decision with the garden board, and it's partially an extension of what the church had decided. They had their meetings and made the decision to not have gatherings still. I believe that they had an outdoor service last Sunday, which was the first, and that was a really big deal because people wanted to get together. So we actually haven't had it, except for those Wednesday nights and the filming of this video, which is why I think everybody just lit up because they finally got to come together and be, you know, invited to the same party. So we haven't had a lot of events, but I do see they're happening organically because people show up and work, and then sometimes I'll come to the garden and see just people carrying on and having a good time, and so it's very there's no organized togetherness right now. It's just kind of, it unfolds.
What about in years past? I mean, just some of the speakers from your group were talking about, you know, obviously the church on one side and the senior center on the other. Have there been ways in which the garden has sort of connected with those people like prior to COVID in ways that kind of, I guess, showcase the space and the work y'all have done?
You mean, so like events?
Like just ways of bringing in other people in the community or the neighbors and stuff around the garden.
Well, before COVID, we always have our work days every Wednesday night, and volunteers come, and the goal is to kind of work on the farm, and we at that time have the free farm stand. So that was really fun, and I look forward to getting back to that because I think you saw Barb mention that's how she met us. There's a few people that had met us that way, and we had kind of our regular customers. So that was really fun. So we do that, and then we do, and everybody's invited when we have it again, but we do our chili cook-off fundraiser, which has been really good. We get a really big crowd of people from around town, and gardeners and gardeners' friends and just neighbors, and that's been a fantastic event for us. And then we have farm tours, which we love.
That's great. And yeah, just I want to point out to everyone that that Heather was kind enough to put a link in the chat box so you can see what the land looked like before the garden was built, which is quite a juxtaposition. We do have a question here for Russ. Somebody was asking how to get involved in the Master Composter program.
Sure, yeah, and I'll write this in the chat. You can email me directly at russ@growpittsburgh.org. We don't have things set up for a second run of the course yet because we're still going through still working on independent projects of folks for the first year. But it's really exciting that you're interested in it. Yeah, send me an email and we'll stay in touch.
Let's see. Do we have any other questions? Feel free to type them in the chat box, and we can hold people to them here while they're on video. We do have a question. I guess this would be for Scott again. Just curious about what your biggest challenges are this year. Obviously, we had a really wet spring, a really dry summer. You have obviously COVID, which is a pretty big challenge for the world. But specifically with the garden space, can you talk about what have been the big hurdles to get through this season?
The dryness has been hard. Like you saw in that, we're reliant on that 1,000-gallon tank plus a couple other smaller tanks. And so this is the first year we've really run dry, more than once actually. And fortunately the local fire, the Duquesne Fire Department will come and fill it up. And they've had to do that twice, and I'm like trying not to, overtake our welcome, so to speak. But the dryness has been hard, and it's been hard on gardeners because, it means just so much watering. And then we've had a few little bugs in our water pump system. There's kind of like some adjustments that needed to be made. And every time we find out that happens, it seems to, and then we have to wait for a repair kind of thing. I think we finally got down to it. But so what that meant was that people were having to carry the water more than we would really like. So we have to water more and do that. Be carrying it. So the dryness has been hard. The soil I talked about in the farm has been difficult. That'll definitely be probably some emails to Dan Dalton and anybody else who's willing to receive emails on that. We took sweet potatoes out of the rotation because I figured out that I read that they attract nematodes, root knot nematodes, and there's not much you can plant afterwards that isn't susceptible to them. So for now, especially since we don't have the gatherings, we took that out. And then from the community's perspective, COVID's been really difficult. It hasn't, it's not going to break us, but it's just, we're kind of a group that all wants to be together and have a good time. And there's a lot of people that I wish could have been in this video and represented for their roles and stuff. And it's, for me as a coordinator, it's hard to have them left out, not have these big groups and have to, have small groups. So.
Yeah, thanks for speaking to that. There's a question about the recording. It should be available to share for those folks who want to watch it later on. So just a heads up that if you miss something, you should be able to watch it again and check out that video again as well. So Scott, Kimberly's asking, are you doing any community food prep or cooking education? Just sort of, connecting the fresh food side, or are there other people in the community maybe that you know or work with who kind of talk about what to do with the stuff that you're growing?
Yeah, well, once again, not right now. But there was, that was one of the many plans we had developed over the winter, which included that kind of like what you're referring to, is that connection of the food prep, cooking education. I know that, so what we're doing now is giving food to the Duquesne Family Support Center, and they're distributing there. And they do some cooking education currently, and they have programs that they do, and I know that they're doing some on Zoom. But we had intentions of developing different things to and including, we had big plans for a fermentation workshop, some pickling and dealing with the excess that way and kind of understanding the health benefits to that. And then we have kind of long-term dreams of having people teach cooking classes and connecting people to the food and helping them understand. You know, it's really fun when somebody thinks they don't want to try something or don't like it, and then they come and say that they like it. You know, it's that kind of, so hopefully we'll get to that point, and that's definitely in the works.
Yeah, a lot of great opportunities are sort of taking a back seat right now, but thanks for speaking to that. Trying to see, I have a question about pollination, like, you know, getting good pollination, getting good fruit production on the farm. How has your pollination been? How has fruit production been, I guess, within your beds?
To my knowledge, it's been really good. I don't think we've had any, one of the clues I kind of look for is when zucchinis when they rot out because they're not being pollinated. And to my knowledge, unless I'm not aware of it, to my knowledge, we haven't had a huge problem with that. And when I go down there, actually, well, you saw the cutting flower garden and they're full of bees. And when we began, we received a grant with the Feed a Bee program to put in a pollinator garden. So we have a pretty rich pollinator garden, which has gone through a rough year this year as well. We had some grass take over, and it just kind of, we'll probably have to clean it up a little bit. But we actually have a pretty good, insect life there. It's actually not, to my knowledge, been a problem. So
That's great. Yeah, I think we have some funds too that we can probably for the pollinator to buck it up for next season.
That'd be great. I'll be emailing you too.
yeah, definitely. I always set aside money for seeds and plants. So obviously, to that point, the follow-up question was: you're seeing a lot of bees and butterflies out there right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's great.
And Japanese beetles.
And Japanese beetles. Yeah.
They're doing real well.
So do we have any other questions that people want to ask of our speakers? We have a little bit of time left here, so we can pick their brains if there's anything else folks want to ask. We do have one last question. This one for Alyssa. And it is, examples of projects from the Sustainability Fund. You had mentioned earlier when you were talking about the Sustainability Fund that, you know, things like irrigation systems, what tend to be the things that people are asking for the most right now?
Yeah, so I should have mentioned the dollar amount when I was talking about this, and typically most of the projects that we fund are under $1,000. So people are asking for small but really beneficial things for their gardens. So garden expansion, like I said, with raised beds, season extension materials. So we're thinking about going into fall, and people are wanting to grow a little bit later with row cover or plastic and hoops and that sort of thing. And another really common request in the fall is mulch and cover crops. So putting your garden to bed. And also people will ask for things that we can purchase now that they'll use in the very early spring. So starting to think about perennials, starting to think about seeds for next year, that type of thing. In the springtime, which is the first round, it's much more about infrastructure. So those raised beds, compost, fencing, because they had groundhog problems last year, that type of thing. Those are the most common. We do get requests for sheds, which we sometimes have the budget for and sometimes we don't. I think the most important thing, though, is thinking about what is the thing that is most going to impact your ability to grow in that space and to have people in that space. And so if you're wanting a swimming pool because it's hot and you think that that would be really comfortable to have there, that's probably not going to be something that we're able to fund. But if you're requesting, fencing for groundhogs, if you're requesting, rain barrels because water access is an issue, like those are going to be the things that, if we had a big pot of money, we would fund all of the things. But when it comes down to it, we have a limited budget. And so we have to make those hard decisions. So just, thinking about impact for your garden.
Thanks. Let's see. We have one last question for Scott, unless anybody else wants to type anything in the chat box. And this question is just a follow-up to the part of the video where one of your fellow gardeners was talking about the more accessible beds, so those ones that were a couple feet off the ground. Obviously there's more wood, a little more materials and investment that goes into building one of those. And I wonder if you could just talk about the benefits of that in terms of getting participation from especially older folks or folks who might find it hard to work lower to the ground. You gotta unmute, Scott.
I'm new to this. Definitely the ones that you saw in the video that you can sit on have been great. And in many ways, it would be fun to have more. There's kind of a waiting list for those. And when we sat in the board meetings and the community meetings and thought about what we wanted to do here, the number one priority was to make this garden accessible and welcoming to absolutely everyone. And next to, I don't think we conveyed it in the video, but next to, on the far side, there are some ADA compliant wheelchair accessible tabletop beds. There's 3 of them on a concrete slab that was poured, that was part of the Grow Pittsburgh overall grant project. And it connects to our neighbor, which is a personal care home. So the goal was to have people in that personal care home be able to come down in wheelchairs or walkers or whatever and have a smooth access. And it's really cool. And of course, this year we're not using them. But we do have, so we put strawberries in one of them, or in 2 of them, just to keep them away from the bugs this year. And then one of them is being used by somebody who had an injury. She's not using a wheelchair, but she just can't bend over at all. So it's worked really well for her. So I think it really does. We have a lot of opportunities for different people to garden comfortably.
Thanks for speaking to that. I don't see any more questions. We haven't had any come in, so I think I will turn it back over to Carlin to wrap things up for us. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, John and Scott. We have reached the end of our time here together tonight. I want to thank everyone that participated in this conversation. All the questions were great, and I think that I can say that we all enjoyed learning more about the garden. John, thank you very much for moderating. People expressed interest. This session was recorded, and we will be sharing it out along with the other 2 tours this week. We plan to release that over the weekend. There's some sort of fancy things that have to happen in the background to thread them all together, and then they will all be shared out. So I think on our various organizations, social media platforms, and mailing lists, you'll be able to find those links. We hope that everybody that's here this evening and more can join us on Friday for the last stop on our virtual tour. We're going to wrap up the week at the Moana-Kuche Community Garden. That tour is at noon on Friday, not in the evening like the last 2 have been. We want to mention other exciting events that are happening this week during Urban Ag Week. Grow Pittsburgh is having a fun and interactive virtual zucchini week going through now through Friday. And you can find information about that and the details on their social media pages. And also Three Rivers Agricultural Land Trust is holding a webinar tomorrow called, the title of which is Ensuring Urban Agricultural Sites Remain Protected Community Assets. That will be tomorrow from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And I believe that all of these relevant links are being dropped in the chat box right now. Let's see. Okay, so before we all say goodbye, I just want to thank all of the partner organizations, the East End Food Co-op, PASA Sustainable Agriculture, and Grow Pittsburgh. Thank you very much, Scott, for spending your evening with us here tonight to teach us about the work that you guys are doing in Duquesne. And thank you to Alyssa and Russ for helping us understand the Master Composter program and the Community Garden Sustainability Fund. We can't overstate the importance of urban farms and all the ways that they contribute to improving our communities. Thank you to everyone who made time tonight to learn about urban ag, and to those of you who are working on urban ag sites throughout our county. We appreciate you all. And that's the end of our program this evening. Thank you.